Episode 10, Part 1. Through the Eyes of Our Loved Ones. Changing the conversation. I can't control how you speak to me, but I can control how I respond. Welcome back to Bridging the Gap, understanding both sides. One goal, healing. I'm Christina Fox. Today we're going to talk about something that sounds simple until you're actually trying to do it. Changing how we talk to each other. Because when addiction has been part of our relationship for a long time, sometimes we develop a way of communicating that becomes just as chaotic as everything happening around us. You get angry. I get angry. You raise your voice. I raise mine. You accuse me. I defend myself. I accuse you. You defend yourself. And before we know it, neither one of us is listening. We're just reacting. I've learned a lot through all of this. It's honestly changed how I talk and interact with everyone, not just my children who are in active addiction. You see, I cannot control the way anyone communicates with me. I can't control whether they are reasonable or how angry someone gets. And if someone is under the influence, I certainly can't force them to think clearly or listen to me just because I'm trying to have a rational conversation. But I can control whether I participate in the chaos. And sometimes protecting my peace begins right there. I don't have to attend every argument I'm invited to. It definitely took me some time to grasp this concept. Something that stands out to me as my turning point was when a coworker of mine, who I felt was provoking me, started talking to me crazy, so I felt I had to do the same. Afterwards, I was so disappointed in myself for losing my composure. That was my turning point because it forced me to look at myself and to take back my power. When someone says something to you that is out of line or that isn't true, you want to correct it. When you're being accused of something, you want to defend yourself. When someone twists what happened, you want to explain what happened from your perspective. And when somebody comes at you sideways, well, sometimes you want to come back sideways too. But what does that accomplish? Besides feeling great that you got it off your chest, usually, nothing. Now you're both angry. I'm saying things I didn't intend to say. You're saying things you may or may not remember. The original conversation has disappeared. And somehow, we're arguing about 17 other things that happened over the last 10 years. No, I don't even remember what we started arguing about. Nobody feels heard. Nothing gets resolved. And afterward, I'm left carrying the stress from a conversation that I didn't have to continue. You see, you don't have to continue communicating this way. It's unhealthy. Choosing not to engage in an argument doesn't mean the other person is right. It doesn't mean their behavior is okay. And it doesn't mean their words don't hurt. It simply means I'm no longer willing to let someone else's chaos become my chaos. Sometimes the healthiest conversation is the one we choose to stop having. If you're high, if you're intoxicated, if you're screaming, if you're threatening me, if you're insulting me, or if we're simply going in circles, I can stop and say, I'm not going to argue with you. We can talk when we're both calmer. I'm going to end this conversation now. I love you, but I'm not going to continue while we're speaking to each other this way. And then, we have to actually stop. That's the part we sometimes forget. We say we're done arguing, then stay on the phone another 45 minutes arguing about why we're done arguing. I've been there. But every explanation doesn't need another explanation. Sometimes I've already said what I needed to say. The conversation can end. And ending it doesn't mean I don't care. It means I've recognized that nothing healthy is happening anymore. Timing matters too. There are conversations that need to happen, but they don't necessarily need to happen right now. Trying to have a serious conversation with someone who is under the influence may not accomplish what we're hoping it will. And honestly, trying to have one when I'm furious or the other person is, may not accomplish much either. Sometimes you just need to ask yourself, what am I trying to accomplish here? Am I trying to be understood? Am I trying to solve something? Am I trying to set a boundary? Or am I trying to make you admit that I'm right? Because those are very different conversations. I can be completely right and still choose the wrong time to say it. That's something I've had to learn too. Changing the way I speak doesn't mean pretending I'm not angry. This is important. Protecting my peace doesn't mean becoming silent. It doesn't mean tolerating disrespect. It doesn't mean smiling while someone treats me terribly. And it doesn't mean pretending something didn't hurt me. I can still say, "What you said hurt. I won't accept being spoken to that way. I'm angry about what happened. I don't agree with you. That behavior is not okay with me." But I can say those things without becoming cruel myself. I don't have to call you names. I don't have to remind you of every terrible thing you've ever done. I don't have to use your addiction as a weapon in every disagreement. I don't have to say something I know will cut deeply just because you hurt me first. Because once I do that, I'm no longer only responding to unhealthy communication. I'm participating in it. And that's not who I want to be. Words can become weapons on both sides. Sometimes we know exactly where someone's wounds are. We know what they're ashamed of. We know what hurts them. We know what mistake they regret most. And when we're angry, it can be tempting to reach for it. But if we're trying to heal our relationship, we can't keep using each other's wounds as ammunition. That goes both ways. You don't get to use my love for you to manipulate me. And I don't get to use your past to humiliate you. You don't get to threaten me because I said no. And I don't get to tell you you'll never change because I'm angry today. We can hold each other accountable without destroying each other in the process. And sometimes, there isn't going to be a healthy conversation. I think we need to be honest about that too. Not every relationship reaches a place where both people communicate well. I can change how I speak. And you may continue speaking to me the same way. I can stop yelling. And you may continue yelling. I can stop blaming. And you may continue blaming me. I can try to have a healthy conversation. And you may not be capable or willing to meet me there right now. My growth doesn't guarantee yours. But it still matters. Because I'm not changing the way I communicate only to change you. I'm changing it because I want peace in my own life. I want to be able to walk away from a conversation knowing I said what I needed to say. I didn't abandon myself. I didn't become someone I don't recognize. And I don't have to spend the next 3 hours replaying everything I wish I hadn't said. That is part of healing too. To the person I love. If I end a conversation because we're hurting each other, I'm not necessarily ending our relationship. If I tell you we'll talk later, it doesn't mean I don't care about what you're saying. If I refuse to argue, I'm not saying your feelings don't matter. I'm saying this isn't the right time for us to work through them. And if I ask you not to speak to me disrespectfully, that's not rejection. That's me asking for a healthier relationship between us. I want to be able to hear you, but I also need you to learn how to hear me. And neither of us can hear much when we're screaming over each other. Maybe changing the conversation begins with one person. Ideally, both of us change. Both of us learn. Both of us listen differently. Both of us take responsibility for the things we say. But I don't have to wait for you to start. I can change my part now. I can pause before answering. I can decide not to respond immediately to an angry text. I can walk away when a conversation becomes abusive. I can stop trying to prove myself to someone who isn't able to hear me. I can choose my words. I can apologize when my words are wrong. And I can learn that silence isn't always weakness. Sometimes, silence is me deciding that my peace is more important than having the last word. And in part 2, we're going to cross the bridge. Because recovery has a side of this conversation too. When we're beginning recovery, we may be learning how to communicate without the substance, without running, without lying to avoid consequences, without becoming defensive every time our past is mentioned, and without assuming every question from someone we love is an attack. Our loved ones have things to change. And so do we. Because healthy communication can't be one person learning to speak differently while the other continues causing harm. Eventually, we both have to learn how to hear each other. Not perfectly, not without disagreement, but without every disagreement becoming another wound. That's how we begin changing the conversation. I thank you for spending this time with me today. If this episode spoke to you, I hope you'll listen to part 2 because this is one conversation where I think both sides really need to hear each other. To connect with me, please visit ChristinaFoxAuthor.com. From there, you can explore my books, listen to the podcast, read the blog, subscribe to my newsletter, and connect with me across all of my social media platforms. Until next time, protect your peace, choose healthy boundaries, and remember, I can't control what you say, but I can decide what I participate in. Take care. Bridging the Gap. Episode 10, Part 2. Through the Eyes of Recovery. Changing the conversation. Learning how to communicate without running, hiding, or defending. Welcome back to Bridging the Gap. Understanding both sides. One goal. Healing. I'm Christina Fox. In Part 1, we talked about changing the way we communicate from the perspective of our loved ones. Now, let's cross the bridge, because communication can look very different from this side, especially when we're coming out of addiction and trying to learn how to have healthy conversations again. And honestly, some of us may be learning how to have them for the first time, because addiction didn't exactly teach us healthy communication. It taught some of us how to avoid, how to hide, how to lie when the truth felt dangerous, how to become defensive when we felt cornered, how to shut down, how to disappear, how to say whatever needed to be said to end the conversation, and sometimes how to get high or drunk so we didn't have to deal with the conversation at all. So when the substance is removed, we still have to learn what to do with everything we used to escape from. And that includes learning how to talk to the people we love. Sometimes I hear something different than what you're actually saying. You might ask me, "Where have you been?" And I hear, "You're lying again." You ask, "Are you okay?" And I hear, "You're using again." You ask why I didn't answer my phone. And before you even finish the question, I'm already defending myself. Maybe you're genuinely asking, but I'm responding to every other time that question came with suspicion. Or I'm responding to my own guilt because there was a time when your suspicion was right. I'm not always reacting to the words you just said. I'm reacting to the history behind them. That's something I have to recognize. Because if I automatically treat every question like an accusation, eventually, you may become afraid to ask me anything at all. And that's not healthy communication either. I have to learn to listen without immediately defending myself. This one can be hard, especially when I've spent a long time defending my behavior. Sometimes the minute you tell me how something affected you, my mind starts preparing my response. That's not what happened. You did things too. You don't understand. I already apologized for that. Why do you keep bringing this up? And while I'm busy preparing my defense, I haven't actually heard you. Sometimes you aren't asking me to defend myself. You're trying to tell me how something affected you. Those are two different things. I can disagree with part of what you're saying and still listen to how you experienced it. I can remember something differently and still recognize that it hurt you. I can explain myself without dismissing you. And sometimes, I don't need an explanation at all. Sometimes the healthiest thing I can say is, "I hear you. I understand why that hurt you. I was wrong. I'm sorry." No excuse attached. No, "I'm sorry, but..." Just, "I'm sorry." That's something recovery can teach us too. I don't have to win the conversation. There was a time when being wrong felt like losing. If I admitted you were right about something, I felt exposed. If I admitted I lied, then I had to face why I lied. If I admitted I hurt you, then I had to feel what I had been trying not to feel. So sometimes it was easier to argue. Change the subject. Bring up something you did. Or find one little detail you got wrong and make the entire conversation about that. Anything except sitting in the uncomfortable truth. But recovery asks something different from me. It asks me to stay in the conversation. Not every conversation. Not an abusive conversation. Not one where we're destroying each other. But the healthy, uncomfortable conversations that I used to run from. Because discomfort isn't always danger. Sometimes discomfort is accountability. Sometimes it's growth. Sometimes it's hearing something about myself that I don't like and deciding what I'm going to do with it. I have to learn how to say what I actually mean. Sometimes we've gotten so used to hiding what we're feeling that we don't even know how to say it anymore. Maybe I'm overwhelmed, but instead I get angry. Maybe I'm embarrassed, but I act like I don't care. Maybe I'm scared I'm going to relapse, but I tell everyone I'm fine. Maybe I need some space. So instead of saying that, I disappear. Maybe something you said hurt me, but instead of telling you that, I hurt you back. That's not communication. That's reaction. And there's a difference. Part of recovery is learning how to recognize what I'm actually feeling before I throw it at somebody else. I can say, I'm overwhelmed right now. I need a little time before we talk about this. That hurt me. I'm struggling today. I don't know what I need right now, but I'm not okay. Those conversations may feel uncomfortable, but they're a lot healthier than making everyone guess what's going on with me, especially when I'm struggling. This may be one of the most important communication changes in recovery. Learning how to speak before everything falls apart. If I'm thinking about using, say it. If something triggered me, say it. If I'm overwhelmed, say it. If I need help, ask. That doesn't mean my loved ones become responsible for keeping me sober. They aren't. But hiding a struggle doesn't make the struggle disappear. Sometimes we wait until we're drowning before we tell anyone we were having trouble swimming. Recovery gives us an opportunity to change that. I don't have to wait until I've relapsed to admit I've been struggling. And I don't have to pretend I'm strong every second just because people are finally starting to believe in me again. Being honest about struggling doesn't erase my progress. Sometimes honesty is what protects it. But my loved ones aren't the only ones allowed to have communication boundaries. This matters too. Recovery doesn't mean I have to sit through every conversation just because I made mistakes in my past. Accountability doesn't mean accepting disrespect. If every disagreement becomes, this is exactly how you were when you were using. If everything I've ever done is brought into every argument, if I'm called names, if I'm constantly reminded that nobody trusts me, I can say, I want to talk about this, but not like this. I can ask for a pause. I can step away. I can have boundaries too. The difference is, I have to be careful not to use a boundary as another way to avoid accountability. There's a difference between, I'm not discussing this because I don't want to hear it, and I want to discuss this when we can both do it in a healthier way. Sometimes we have to be honest with ourselves about which one we're doing. Healthy communication has room for both people's voices. I am also learning that disagreement isn't rejection. Someone can disagree with me and still love me. Someone can be disappointed in a choice I made without believing I'm a disappointment. Someone can tell me no without abandoning me. Someone can need space without hating me. And someone can be angry with me without our entire relationship being over. When we've lived in chaos for a long time, everything can feel like all or nothing. You're either with me or against me. You either believe me or you don't care. You either help me or you've abandoned me. But healthy relationships don't work like that. We can love each other and disagree. We can be frustrated and still come back to the conversation. We can need space and still have a relationship. And I don't have to turn every difficult conversation into proof that nobody cares about me. Sometimes nobody is going to say it perfectly. This is important for both sides. We're going to get it wrong sometimes. I'm going to say something badly. You're going to say something badly. I'm going to misunderstand your tone. You may misunderstand mine. Someone is going to get defensive. Someone may need to walk away and come back later. Healthy communication doesn't mean we suddenly communicate perfectly. It means we're willing to repair it when we don't. I can come back and say, "That didn't come out the way I meant it. Can we start this conversation over? I got defensive earlier. I'm ready to listen now. I shouldn't have spoken to you that way." That is growth too. We don't have to destroy an entire relationship because one conversation went badly. We can learn how to repair. And I think that's something a lot of us never learned. To my loved ones, I know there were times talking to me felt impossible. You didn't know what would set me off. You didn't know what I would remember. You didn't know whether I was telling you the truth. And sometimes you probably stopped saying things because you were exhausted from trying to be heard. I understand that differently now. But as we move forward, I need us both to learn a new way of talking to each other. I can't expect you to forget everything that happened. And you can't expect me to spend the rest of my life communicating from the person I used to be. We have to allow room for something different. You have to be able to tell me when I've hurt you. And I have to be able to hear it. I have to be able to tell you when something hurts me. And I need you to hear me too. We don't have to agree about everything. We don't have to remember everything the same way. And neither of us has to win. Maybe the goal of a healthy conversation isn't winning at all. Maybe the goal is leaving the conversation understanding each other a little better than we did when it started. And sometimes that means listening. Sometimes apologizing. Sometimes taking responsibility. Sometimes asking for space. Sometimes coming back later. And sometimes realizing this conversation isn't going anywhere healthy today. We'll try again another time. That's not failure. That's learning how to communicate differently. Because recovery isn't only learning how to live without a substance. For many of us, it's learning how to live differently, how to feel without escaping, how to disagree without destroying, how to be honest without hiding, how to listen without immediately defending, how to speak without trying to wound, and how to repair something when we get it wrong. That's part of recovery too. And that's where both sides of this bridge meet. Neither one of us can control what the other person says. But both of us can take responsibility for what we bring into the conversation. I thank you for spending this time with me today. If this episode spoke to you, I hope you listened to part 1 as well. And if there's something you wish the other side understood about communication, I'd love for you to join the conversation. To connect with me, please visit ChristinaFoxAuthor.com. From there, you can explore my books, listen to the podcast, read the blog, subscribe to my newsletter, and connect with me across all of my social media platforms. Until next time, take responsibility for your healing, respect healthy boundaries, and remember, I don't have to win the conversation to have a voice in it. Sometimes the biggest change is learning how to listen and making sure the person across from me has a chance to be heard too. Take care.